It seems at this point that every couple of days, some state decides to come out and one up the last Republican effort to strip away women's reproductive rights. The laws are becoming more radical, and we know that not far into the future, the Supreme Court is going to be weighing in on a couple of different cases. So when it comes to reproductive rights, this is a pretty critical moment. We've been doing a lot of coverage about the topic here at the Damage Report, but we decided this is important enough that it's time to bring in the big guns and the people who've been really doing deep dives into these different topics, some of the framing and narratives around them, as well as where this thing is likely to go. So we're very lucky to be joined right now by Max Burns, joining us once again, Democratic strategist and the founder of Third Degree Strategies. So Max, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're also very lucky to have Molly Jong-Fast, a contributing writer at The Atlantic. Thank you, Molly, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Molly, I'd like to start with you because I know that you wrote recently about a piece of testimony that went viral of Karen Berg talking about Bill 321 in Kentucky and talking about hearts, basically the biology of hearts, how that has been injected into this conversation recently. Tell us a little bit about this.
I mean, how we've gotten here with these quote unquote heartbeat bills is kind of insane. They started, this is, was a very kind of fringe idea that these fetuses under, 6, I mean, I guess, sort of around 8 weeks would have a heartbeat, or 10 weeks. I mean, they don't have a heart, right? It's just a sort of this electrical imaging that looks like a beat. And so that was where these bills came from. And actually, it's really interesting. The woman who created this was like a very extremist. She had anti-LGBTQ. She had been a real fringe character, and now because the Republican Party has become so conservative and it's sort of a race to the base, you're seeing these bills are becoming kind of the norm. And so this woman she's a member of this state government, and she's also a doctor. She's a radiologist, a diagnostic radiologist, who she knows what she knows about actual science. And so this heartbeat bill is like very much kind of unscientific, very kind of religious and emotional kind of thing that has really been sort of pushed by the far right as a way to make it so that women can't have choices.
And to be clear, you rightly point out that what is being detected is not a heartbeat by what anyone would consider a normal. And there's no biological or moral argument that's specifically being made here. It's certainly not a case of viability. Nobody thinks that these fetuses at that point are viable. And I have never heard them articulate a moral case for why the presence of an electrical signal represents a turning point in the birth process. It really does feel like this is just designed to, I guess there's a heart, I'm supposed to feel differently. It feels really as simplistic as that. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's a very, on their part, craven way to inject emotionality into something the size of a fingernail clipping, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are not, there's no development there for a heart. And so I think ultimately, it's a way, I mean, none of this is about anything but power, right? Ultimately, I mean, you have states that are working on bills that make it that want you to carry an ectopic pregnancy, which isn't viable, which could kill the mother. I mean, this is about like religion, it's about power, it's about weird tropes in, evangelical community that, it's really not about abortion, and it's really not about anything, it's really scary, I think.
Yeah. Well, you rightly point out that it is certainly about power. Max, I want to go to you because you've written a recent op-ed where you make the case that this is fundamentally not just about reproductive rights, but this is a question more broadly about privacy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Molly makes a great point that this began as something that was a very fringe issue for the far right. This has now become a consensus Republican position. The idea of not just how should we ban abortion, but how severe should we be in shaming these women and dragging them into court for trying to exercise their rights. When you look at a case like Idaho, which is using the Texas bounty hunter framework to essentially say that parents are banned from leaving the state to procure gender affirming therapy for their children. When you look at Missouri, that's saying women cannot travel outside the state to obtain an abortion, or your neighbors can turn you in for that. You're taking legal rights people have to travel, to exercise choice rights, to exercise medical rights, and saying this is not just about abortion, it's about privacy. And if you can undercut that right to privacy, you can undercut gay marriage rights, trans rights, abortion rights, and do it through this same effective framework that we're already seeing.
You know, I want to get both of your impressions. I'm going to start with you though, Max, because you rightly point out that they've gone beyond just earlier thresholds for stripping away the rights than the Supreme Court has ever allowed for in the past. They've added the bounty hunter provision, as well as now trying to regulate legally what people leave the state to do. We know that this is a Supreme Court that has been chosen for ideological reasons to achieve the end of getting rid of Roe v. Wade. But do you believe that over the next year or two, when the Supreme Court is going to have multiple high-profile cases in this area, things like the bounty hunter provision or trying to regulate, like locking people up for life for leaving the state to do things, or can those plausibly get by even this ideological of a Supreme Court?
Well, the scary thing is, even if ultimately Texas goes ahead with this, what's being discussed now of a law for potentially making abortion a capital crime, executing women for having an abortion, even if the Supreme Court would ultimately find that that is wrong, if they do like they've done with this Texas law and allow it to remain in place while they're considering it, that's effectively making that law. That's effectively ending abortion in the states, even if it's still federally legal. I mean, if a state can tell you that you can't leave the state to get an abortion, they've just outlawed abortion for you nationally. And if the Supreme Court lets that carry forward, I mean, that puts us in a really dark place.
Yeah, Molly, well, what do you think about those sorts of provisions? Do you see those being tolerated by this? I mean, obviously they're allowing them to stay in place now, but when they finally get around to ruling on these sorts of things, these novel mechanisms, are they going to allow those, do you think?
Well, I think if you look at the decisions the Supreme Court has made, they have never, ever, if they ideologically like something, they don't care how it works, right? I mean, there were so many legal scholars who said, well, these Texas laws are so badly framed that even if I agree with what the substance of it is, I would never allow it to go on. And then this Supreme Court was like, well, okay. So I think the message that these state legislators have gotten is that they can do whatever they want as long as the Supreme Court line, these six Trumpy justices, I mean, 3 Trump justices and 3 conservative justices align with it. So yeah, I think there's no possible way that they just overturned the Clean Water Act on the shadow docket. I mean, they're with no decision, right? I mean, this is crazy stuff. This is end times. And I think the fantasy that the Supreme Court will behave in any normal way is exactly that, a fantasy.
Well, look, as we're recording this right now, we're in the wake of Ketanji Brown Jackson being confirmed for the Supreme Court. Presumably she would support women's reproductive rights, but that does not actually shift the balance of power in the Supreme Court. And you have some states that are passing legislation designed to make access to reproductive services more affordable, including for out-of-state women, trying to set themselves up as havens for women coming from states where their rights have been stripped away. Nationally, the Democrats really don't seem to be doing much about this. Molly, like, what would you like to see the Democrats do to help counterbalance some of the radical anti-abortion policies we're seeing?
Well, so here's the problem, right? You have California and Connecticut, which are working on these state legislative bills to try and provide some safe havens. It's an enormous country. And ultimately, I think the problem is going to be, you're going to have states that are going to be so radically different that they're not going to be able to be in the same country. I mean, ultimately, where this is going is you'll have a state like Texas, say that Abbott gets what he wants, right? He says, you can't leave the state to get trans care for your kid. You can't, we're going to capital punishment, towards women who try to have abortions. All right, say you have that state, and then you have a state like Connecticut in the same country. I mean, that is not going to go for that long. I mean, ultimately, you're going to end up with a scenario where these states do not have enough in common to be part of the same country. And ultimately, I think this is going to end somewhere very, very bad, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why is a state like Connecticut going to be willing to finance a state like Texas? I mean, you're going to have these high tax states paying for these these states that are acting in ways that are completely antithetical to what American values are. So, I mean, I worry a lot about where this ends. I just can't see. I mean, it's funny because it's like, it used to be the Supreme Court was conservative, but they were a little bit sneaky about it. And so they would, they'd have sort of things that were a bridge too far. But now it really feels like nothing is a bridge too far for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Max, I wanted to ask you, in theory, the Democrats could do something before the midterms, at least consider some sort of legislation, even if it has no chance of passing in our current system. Yep. Some people have speculated that the Democrats are actually more comfortable allowing this stuff to go through because it provides an easy thing to then campaign on. But of course, that has some costs associated with it. What do you think about the politics of it, and where do you see this going in the next year or two?
So the biggest bait I think that Democrats have ever swallowed is this Republican nonsense that it is political suicide to talk about abortion. Of course, Republicans would say that. We just saw a Hart Research poll come out recently that showed that in elections where the issue focused on abortion, voters preferred Democrats by 71 points. And these were districts across 11 states, blue, red, purple. This is an issue where, of course, Republicans want Democrats to be quiet. When the issue is about abortion, they lose. And the worst thing that we can do is act as if there is no crisis. These activists in the states, abortion providers, voters, are fighting tooth and nail to protect their abortion rights, but they're just not seeing the urgency from Congress and from Washington. And that is an incredibly demoralizing and dangerous thing to do going into a midterm.
Exactly. I'll continue, Molly.
I also think that Biden is very uncomfortable with abortion. He's very religious. He's Catholic. He's not comfortable. It is what it is, right? I mean, but I think that Democrats should still embrace this. It's a winning issue for them. Most Americans are pro-choice. Most Americans think this is like crazy government overreach. And I think Democrats should be, on this. And women, college-educated women, the people who vote, really feel strongly about this.
Yeah, and certainly the stakes are pretty clear, and it's been such a high-profile issue week after week after week that not only do you have that advantage, but it's easy to translate that into some sort of electoral gains. I would like to see it, but so far, not much actual activity. Now, I want to thank you both for working in this area because, again, the stakes are so high, and also for joining us on the show. Molly, where can people see more of your work?
I write a newsletter for The Atlantic called Wait What, and I have a podcast called The New Abnormal.
Awesome, thank you. And Max, where can people follow you?
You can check me out at the Daily Beast or NBC News or on Twitter at @TheMaxBurns.
Awesome, thank you to both of you. Be well.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.